Hello everyone, and welcome to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering podcast. This is episode 1, and today we're going to be doing a set review for March of the Machine. There's a lot of cool cards in this set, and as always, I am joined by James. How's it going, dude?
Hello, yeah, it's going good. Reading through the spoiler, looks like we've got some spicy ones for Cube, so yeah, let's have a look.
Yeah, a lot of cool cards for us to go through today. Some housekeeping before we kick off. In this episode, we're going to be looking at white, blue, black, and red. And then next week, we'll be looking at everything else. So do make sure you are subscribed to get notified when that video comes out. Okay, so I think it's best to just kick off with our first white card. We have Archangel Elspeth. It is 2 white for a legendary planeswalker Elspeth with 4 starting loyalty. It has a +1 of create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink, a -2 of put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying. And a -6 of return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, all the abilities on this, I think, are fine. Everything seems fair, but nothing kind of really grabs me, if that makes sense. Nothing feels kind of overly broken. I think it's a very solid planeswalker. I think most of the time, I would imagine you're obviously playing it on 4. You're probably going to be +1 to make a 1/1 lifelink. Next turn, you're -2, making that a 3/3 flying lifelink. If you have a board state already, you could make one creature that you already have bigger, and obviously fly. But kind of, I'm not sure if that's what you want just from your 4-drop to do. I think you kind of maybe want a bit more. If I'm playing it and -2 straight away, then I'd probably just want to take like a card like Unbreakable Formation, which kind of does it to your whole board, or a different spell that kind of bumps up your whole board rather than just making one thing a little bit bigger. Also, like white 4-drop planeswalkers is a very hard slot to kind of break into. Like, I don't think this is better than Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, and I don't think it's better than the Wandering Emperor. It kind of reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you remember, James, the blue planeswalker Mew Yangling Skydancer.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Well, a good one we never saw playing Cube.
No, exactly. Yeah. It kind of has a similar style of pattern of kind of like +1 sort of protect itself. Next turn, you minus it to make a flyer. In more kind of budget cubes and kind of like less powered cubes, like that card is solid, and that's kind of where I see Archangel Elspeth. But because it's a mythic and it's kind of like the big storyline card, there's a chance that this could just be wildly expensive for a little bit. What's your take, James? What do you think?
Yeah, I can certainly see it. I think this is a pretty powerful card. If you want to put it in your cube, then people will take it and they will play it because it's good and it will kill people. On the other hand, it's just really hard to make a case for this over any of the other white 4-drops people put in their cube. The card I was thinking of was Elspeth Knight Errant, which I think kind of used to be a cube staple and has kind of got power crept out a bit by Seasoned Engineer and Palace Jailer and whatnot. But if you compare that card to this one, I think the plus is pretty much the same. The plussing to make a feature. The that one pluses to give +3/+3 in flying. It's only till end of turn, but I think that actually matters less than you'd think because when you're using that plus, you're killing them so quickly that normally in 2 turns, it kind of doesn't matter that much if counters stick around. And yeah, I think it's significantly weaker than a card that is already not quite powerful enough to make the cut. But yeah, so if you like that card sweet, I want to put it in, then it's not that it's not so weak no one will play it, but it's just not the most powerful option at its spot in the curve.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Yeah, specifically 4-drop in white is a very 4 cube where you can only run so many of them. It's a very competitive slot.
Yeah,
and that's
for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Do you want to take away with that next one?
Yeah. So next up we have Conjurer's Mantle. It is 1 white for a artifact equipment with equip 1. It has the equipped creature gets +1/+1 and vigilance. Solid start, but we need a little more. Whenever equipped creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card that shares a creature type with that creature, so with the attacking creature, from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So I think this is a pretty interesting card. If you put it in, your general white aggressive deck, maybe you have 6 humans. Sure, you'll hit some of the time, but you're not necessarily getting a choice of creatures. You're not necessarily getting a creature you want, and there's a decent chunk of the time you'll just miss. And if you're not hitting, then this is worse than like short sword, and no one puts short sword in their cube. So you need to be able to hit. You need to be able to hit reliably, and that means you need to have a lot of creatures with the same type. So I think this pretty clearly points towards a tribal deck. Now, if you just have one tribe in white, the problem is, say I have like humans is the tribe I have in white. Well, this isn't the best humans payoff you could put in its slot. Where I think this does get interesting is if your cube is really tribal heavy, and let's say I have multiple tribes in white, then this is a really nice pivot card between them. Let's say I had like green-white humans, but also blue-white spirits. And it's really nice to have like a payoff that works in either of those decks, lets you stay open a bit longer in the draft, maybe. So I think it's kind of niche, but maybe there are cubes that go really heavy on tribal. That might be its spot.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the main thing is what the chances are of you hitting this. Like if you're hitting every other swing, then it probably doesn't get there. But if you can, what's the math on this? That there's like 30 cards in your deck by the time this is coming down and equipping, something like that. What's that? What do you need? Like 5? Is that only 5? 5 other humans? Would you say? Or
yeah, but remember, it's 5 humans left in your deck. You already have 1 human that you've drawn.
yes.
But I think the bigger issue is right. Let's say you have 6 humans, and that's your most represented creature type. But then a bunch of the time, the creature that you happen to have drawn and be attacking with won't be a human. It will be like your hippogriff, and you have 1 hippogriff, and this is no good. You have a 0 chance of hitting other hippogriffs. So I think it's more like finding that creature that is of the represented type, and you don't get to choose which of your creatures live and you get to attack with. So you kind of need to have like quite a density of one type, I think.
No, I think that's fair. Like I'll be honest. I think I'm a little higher on this card, but that's kind of just it is a thing of just like in my own cube I have is it Thalia's Lieutenant, and the one that when you play a human after it gets a counter on it, that kind of thing, and just like most good white creatures nowadays are just naturally humans. Like it isn't that hard to just have half your white cards be humans. Like
Sure.
I do lose some things by kind of not running like things like Isamaru or Adonto Vanguard, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think if you have Champion of the Parish, I think if you have Thalia's Lieutenant, and you are kind of not making white a full-on human tribal deck, but you're leaning players in that direction by rewarding them by playing things like Thalia's Lieutenant and Champion of the Parish, I think this could be interesting because there are also like token makers that make humans. So you have things like Usher of the Fallen. Again, you have to put this on the token, not the actual creature, so that isn't fantastic. But yeah, this could be a bit dirtly if you're not going full-on tribal. But
Yeah, no, I can see it. Maybe I'm underrating it a little bit for like human tribal or whatever. As you say, I think in your cube, you don't make massive sacrifice in crowd quality, and you do just have a lot of humans. But I do think you need a lot of humans for it to be good. Like even if you had like 15 creatures and like 8 of them were humans, I think the problem you could run into is like of your 2 early creatures, one of them's a human, one of them isn't. You play this, your opponent will realize that you're way more likely to hit the human, so they'll kill the human, leave you with the non-human, and you won't hit.
Yeah, I guess the other way it could go is you could hit all of your humans in the top 6, put one of them in your hand, and then put a load of good creatures onto the bottom of your library. That could be a bit awkward.
Definitely also a thing.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think let's move on to Elish Norn, which is our first of a couple double-sided cards of the day. So Elish Norn is 2 white for a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It is a 3/5 with Vigilance. Whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or opponents you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1 generic mana. It also has the activate ability 2 and a white, sacrifice 3 other creatures, and exile Elish Norn, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner control, activate only as a sorcery, and it transforms into the Argent Etchings, which is a saga. Chapter 1, which happens straight away as soon as you do this, incubate 2 5 times, then transfer incubator tokens that you control. So this is the first time we've seen incubate. This basically means you make a incubator token with +1 counters on it equal to the incubate number. So with this first chapter of this saga, you make 5 incubate tokens, all with 2+1 counters on them. Incubate generally just says pay 2 generic mana to flip them, but this card flips them all straight away. So effectively, just with the chapter 1, you are putting 10 power onto the board. That is pretty scary. It gets scarier in chapter 2 with creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. And then chapter 3, destroy all other permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. Importantly, the incubated tokens transform into Phyrexians. Exile the Argent Etchings, then return it to the battlefield. So you flip it back into the front side of Elish Norn. So there's a lot to go over with this card. It is a lot of card. There's a lot of words. Front side first. So the important part of the front side for me is that ability of your opponent losing 2 life unless they pay 1 triggers if damage is dealt to not only you, but your permanents that you control. So that means that if they're just blocking you, or just blocking your creatures, or just any kind of combat damage like that, if they don't pay 1 for each occurrence of that, they will lose 2 life. That can really add up to a lot of damage very quickly, or if not, kind of just like really stifle what your opponent is trying to do, because it just makes everything, all of their choices, very miserable. How that effect works on a card, so kind of as a 4-drop in an aggro deck, it means that your opponent always has to pay 1 whenever they deal damage to your opponent, so it means that they can't really be blocking your stuff unless they are just leaving all their mana up and not doing anything. Then obviously this card is also going to be quite solid, I think, in a control deck. It's quite good in a number of things. Like, do you need to stabilize? Good, here you go. It's a 3/5 vigilance that has that abilities. Of all the Praetors we're going to be talking about over the 2 videos, we're not talking about all of them. But I think this is probably the second most likely to flip. Like 3 other creatures is not nothing as a cost. But if you already have tokens, if you're already doing aristocratic stuff, it is definitely doable. Like realistically, all you have to do to flip this is to just curve out. You can curve out, play Elish Norn, flip it the next turn, and then you're putting 10 power onto the board immediately. And then the next turn, they're all attacking as 3/3s with double strike. That's like 30 damage potentially on turn 5, unless my math is wildly wrong. Like the fact that this card is, I think, going to be solid as a 4-drop in an aggro deck, and then just as a control deck, like it was like a year ago we were playing like 7 mana for like Curabest the Sea God as like a control finisher. This just asks you to curve out and play this on 4, and you're probably going to win.
Yeah, I think this is incredibly powerful. I think the spot where I think it's best is a go wide deck. For a bunch of reasons. Obviously, you have a mass pump on the back, but I think more importantly, it's way easier to flip if you're making creature tokens, and you're not like sacrificing your whole board that you've invested a bunch of cards into, because it is worth noting they get a opportunity to respond to you playing that cost. There is a world where you go pay 3 mana, sacrifice 3 creatures. You put this trigger on the stack, and your opponent goes, okay, cool, Swords to Plowshares, and you're down your 3 creatures and your Elish Norn.
Oh, that is miserable.
And you're in a lot of trouble. But I think subtly that first ability is kind of also a go wide payoff. Because if you have like one other creature that's like a 4/4 and this, then that ability doesn't matter very much. They can, if you're going to attack them, they can either leave up and they're going to block. They can either like leave up 1 mana, or they can just take 2. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't really matter. But if instead of having that 1/4/4, you had 4 1/1s, and you're going to swing them with all of them, well, they kind of can't block them because they take more damage from blocking them than if they don't block them, and they can't leave up 4 mana every turn. And this really scales. You know, if you play something like a Secure the Waste and make like 10 1/1s, you can, they're just unblockable now, and it even works. They also can't attack into them. If they attack with a 5/5 and you block with 5 1/1s, well, if you deal 1 to each of them, they're taking 10.
Yeah.
They could just deal all the damage to one of them, but then they don't kill your creatures. I think if you make a lot of creatures, that Punisher ability gets way more powerful. I think it's like pretty medium if you're just like playing generic big guys. But I think if you're going wide, it's pretty good. And then obviously it lets you flip your planes, well, flip into the Saga at a much more achievable cost. And the Saga's pretty unbeatable, honestly, isn't it? As you say, 10 power split over 5 bodies. Next turn, they all have double strike. I don't see how you win.
Is there a world, like, do you think in 1-on-1 someone will ever flip this back? Like, is Ellisnorn ever coming back the second time?
I really don't think that matters now.
Yeah.
They are already dead. Unless you just really want to and you don't attack with all your
Yeah.
3/3 double strikes. I don't really see that one coming up too much. I guess theoretically there is an engine there, but you really don't need it. They're dead. Go get a beer, it's fine. But yeah, no, this card's super pushed because it's the fact that you get all this on a really respectable body as well. Like 4 mana 3/5 vigilance is not at all bad.
Yeah, one hell of a card.
Yeah. So assuming your play group enjoys like reading comprehension tests, I think this is a really good card. But
Nice.
dear Lord, Wizards. Cool. Next up, we have Guardian of Girapur. This is 2 and a white for a 3/3 flyer. It's a creature angel and has, when Guardian of Girapur enters the battlefield, exile up to one other target creature or artifact you control. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So I think the card that comes to mind for me with this one is Flickerwisp. If you haven't played with these flicker effects much, they can be really powerful if you just build around them a little. And obviously this scales with the amount of enter the battlefield abilities you have. If you go like Blade Slicer into this, you're having a great time. Now, if we compare it to a Flickerwisp, the upside is it's a 3/3, not a 3/1. That is a huge deal. It means you don't just get blanked by, oh, I played a Lingering Souls and now this creature does nothing. On the other hand, Flickerwisp, you can flicker other people's creatures. You can flicker enchantments. You can flicker lands. All of these cases do come up. It's even great in little edge cases, like, they've mind controlled your creature and you Flickerwisp this and you get it back. This only does creatures or artifacts you control, so that's a limitation for sure. But I think they're pretty close in power level, honestly. I think the extra toughness makes up for a lot of that. And certainly if you have a flicker theme that's fairly aggressive, by all means play both. I think it's a really good effect.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this and Flicker are probably the strongest flicker spells if you're not trying to do like combo-y stuff.
Yeah. It's you have a flicker sub-theme in your aggressive decks, and these are already really good aggressive creatures.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the biggest difference is so this one doesn't combo with stuff because it brings things back at the beginning of the next end step, whereas things like Restoration Angel and Felidar Guardian bring things back straight away, so they tend to kind of lead to more combo-y stuff. Like, but yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. If you're doing enter the battlefield stuff, or just if you just want to reset the initiative or something like that, then yeah, I think Guardian of Girapur is a very solid creature on a very decent body. Like 3 mana 3/3 flyer is just actually very good.
That's a clock, yeah. Precious Planeswalkers. And also Precious leads us into our next card nicely by attacking battles. What does that mean?
It does. Well, so yeah, this is our first battle. We'll give a quick TLDR. I will put a link down in the description below to a video I've already done where I kind of talk about battles in a bit more detail. Like, there's definitely some kind of cool things to do with them. There are some more edge cases. We'll kind of generally be talking about them as they are going to be used in Cube. The TLDR of battles is that you cast them for the front side and you get an effect straight away, kind of like a sorcery or like an enchantment that has an ETB effect. When you do, you give the battle to an opponent and they have to defend them, kind of like how they would defend a planeswalker that they control. So you can attack them, you can deal damage to them. They each have a number in the bottom right-hand corner, and that is how much damage they can take. When you remove the last counter from them, they flip over and you get to cast the backside, which also has an effect. I'll read Invasion of Gobakan in a moment, but let's just talk about this. Is probably a good time to just talk about battles in general, kind of like because it is a new card type, it is on top of being a new mechanic as well. My general opinion of them in terms of how they'll play out in Cube is that generally I think for them to see play, I think you want the front side to do something. You want to be getting your value from it straight away, because effectively the way these kind of play out is you're effectively giving your opponent's life equal to the kind of defense damage, because it's damage you're not dealing to them either through combat or with a burn spell. So a lot of these do have very powerful backsides, but for it to warrant a place in a cube, you need to be getting something from the front side straight away, and then kind of the backside is kind of like a bonus, if that makes sense. If you're in a position where you can effectively give your opponent X amount of life to get the backside, if the backside will help you in the longer game, then it could be worth it. But yeah, for it to warrant a slot, I think you kind of want the front side to be doing something. James, what's kind of your opinion? What's your take on battles?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with all of that. Certainly, the front side can't be irrelevant. But the front sides, I think, are mostly a little bit overcosted versus if that was all you got on a spell. I don't think there are any of them that you're playing in your control deck with no intention of ever flipping them. For me, when I look at these cards, I think they need to go in aggressive decks with cheap creatures, because I want to be able, because I think for it to go from slightly overcosted spell to really snowbally spell is when you get to play it and attack it really quickly and get that payoff within a turn or two, ideally. And that means you need pressure, and it means and I think it also means that the battles that contribute something to the board, whether that be a creature or removing an opponent's creature, something that lets you attack, I think those battles go up quite a lot because they enable you to flip them. If you say there's a battle that creates a 3/3 haste, that 3/3 haste could then attack the battle. If there's a battle that kills a creature that gets their blocker out of the way, you can attack the battle straight away. I think they want to they get a lot better when they're working into their own game plan like that. And yeah, I think in general you want to be surrounding them with creatures. I don't think there are many that will go in your control deck.
No, that's completely fair. I think that's probably a good time for me to actually to read Invasion of Gobakan. It is 1 and a white for a battle siege. So also quickly, siege is a subtype of battles. It means we could see other battles in the future. It comes in with 3 defense counters on it, which means you need to deal 3 damage to it, as we've gone over. When it comes into play, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell this way costs 2 generic more to cast. If you do remove the 3 counters from it, it flips into Light Shaded Array. Actually, on that, you do technically cast the back, so I think it can be countered. But that's something.
Yeah, it can.
Light Shield Array is the back of Invasion of Gobakan. It is an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Sacrifice Light Shield Array. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. I'll be honest, your take has made me reevaluate this card a little bit in terms of pressure and stuff. So before you said the stuff about affecting the board and that kind of stuff, I still think this card is solid to fine. We've seen this sort of hand attack on delay before in white with Elite Spellbinder. That is 1 more mana, but you do get a 3/1 flyer, which I will agree 95% of the time, if not more, will just be better because you have something that can actually kill your opponent or block, that kind of thing. But the fact that this also only has defense counters of 3 mean that you can defeat this battle at not too much of a cost. Like, you can play this on, I guess, turn 3, and you could kill it on that turn, effectively, if you've just curved out beforehand. The flip side of this, putting a count on each creature that attack this turn, I do think is quite good, because I'm assuming because this checks at end steps, it'll also include the counters on the creatures that have attacked the battle and caused it to flip. Which I think is kind of solid, because I know aggro decks don't really want to be taking a turn off and giving your opponent some life. But if the flip side of that is your creatures are bigger for next turn, when you are swinging through to them, that could be good enough. And then um, just kind of as a package of the card, like I think the fact that if you are in that aggressive deck, you can kind of you can put their board wipe preferably or their removal spell on delay. You can then attack this, flip it, and then you have that protection for it. So this can sacrifice to basically blank your opponent's board wipe that you, in theory, have seen coming. That might be like the ultimate perfect scenario for this, and outside of that, it might not be good. I am completely open to that, but I do think this card is interesting, and it's one of the two battles that I am at least intrigued to potentially test. What do you think, James? What's your take?
Sure. I don't think it's terrible. I think I'm a little bit lower on it than you, maybe. I agree it certainly has to go in an aggressive deck. We're not just in for this front side on its own. I the I don't think you want it as your play on turn 2 is my issue in the
Yeah, no, I'd
aggressive
agree.
deck. I think in almost any curve, you'd rather be playing a creature on 2 than play this. So I think the reason I think it needs to go in an aggressive deck is that disruption ability, that taxing ability, that's really good on Elite Spellbinder, but the reason it's good is because you are pressuring the opponent. You have that feel on fire. You're killing them before they can just wait a couple more turns, make a couple more land drops, and play the spell anyway. It's not really great disruption if you're like planning to play a longer game because it just wears out essentially. So yeah, I think it needs to be an aggressive deck. We need to plan it with a lot of other cheap creatures because we want to play a creature on turn 2. We don't want to play this on turn 2. I think the turns where it can be good is like turn 4, turn 5. You play another cheap spell, maybe like a creature or a cheap removal spell, get their blocker out of the way. You have a board already. You swing probably some of your creatures at this battle, some of your creatures maybe at them if you have good attacks. And then you get to flip your battle. You put your counter on all of your creatures straight away, and you have this protection ability, which is pretty good. The games where you do that, I think it will look absolutely incredible. But it's just the games where you don't have that where you don't already have that board advantage, it doesn't do that much. And if you compare this card to like Glorious Anthem, like the games it works, this card's way better. But Glorious Anthem lets you attack in spots where you couldn't otherwise. This doesn't do that because you don't get the pump until you have been able to attack it. It is worth noting, I think, with these battles, by the way, that we've talked a lot about attacking them. You can also like lightning bolt a battle. That does work, and that could be kind of powerful too, I guess. If you're in like Boros aggro, you play this, you tax the thing in their hand, you bolt it, you get some pump if you can attack. But I think overall, it might be worth trying. I don't love it.
No, that's fair. I think from kind of actually just that's the thing. Like these aren't. It's not often you get a new card type. Like was the last one just like legitimately planeswalkers, or was tribal after that? Like you don't get new card types that often. So we're recording this like several days before pre-release, so none of us have even like touched these cards or kind of seen how they play.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to play your pre-releases and tell me why I'm wrong in the comments.
No, exactly. But like, I think just specifically, actually, just one final thing on Invasion of Gobrikhan is like, actually, the more I am reading it, like, I think there is definitely kind of it's a new card. I want to try it. But just from just going through from actually just talking about when it is good, it does actually feel just more like a sideboard card.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of pure sideboard cards in Cube, so that might just be a reason why this one particularly doesn't see play. But we have some other battles on the list. We'll talk about the good ones that we think works, and we'll kind of get to them as we get to them in the colors. But yeah, do you want to take our next white card, James?
So next up we have Progenitor Exarch. It is XX and a white for a 1/2 creature Phyrexian Cat Cleric. When Progenitor Exarch enters the battlefield, you incubate 3x times. So that means you're going to create X incubator tokens. They each have 3+1/+1 counters on them, and you can pay 2 to flip them into creatures, which will then be 3/3s. and except in the case of this cards, you sometimes won't have to play to transform them, because it also has the ability tap, transform, target incubator token you control. So I think with these cards, it is worth noting. If you play this card and then the next turn you transform your incubator token, that incubator token can attack straight away. Because it's been in play since the previous turn, even though it doesn't say haste on it, it has been in play, so it can attack. It doesn't matter that it wasn't a creature last turn. Having said that, I think with this sort of X card, have to run through how it looks on a couple of points in a curve to get the power level. At X is 1, if you compare this to a card like Blade Splicer, it does not do well. Blade Splicer gives you a 3/3 with First Strike. That's a massive deal over not First Strike. It blocks right away. This doesn't defend you very well because it's unless you have that 2 mana right away, it's not going to be able to block on your opponent's coming turn. And doesn't have First Strike, and crucially, a lot of the reasons to play a card like Blade Slicer is you can flicker it. This doesn't give you any value when you flicker it. When it comes back, it will see the value of X as 0 and not do anything. Obviously, the upside of this is, well, it scales. At 5 mana, you're getting 2 incubator tokens. Next turn, you can probably pay to flip 1, tap to flip the other. You're attacking for 6. Yes, that is powerful. It's not. You wouldn't play that as a 5-drop in many cubes, I don't think. But as a split card, and sure, once in a while you'll play it for 7. I don't think it's terrible. It's not the most exciting card in the set, but I think it's decent at every point in the curve, and that's kind of okay. Also, it makes a bunch of artifacts. If you have a bunch of artifact synergies in your white deck, maybe that's the spot for it. Yeah, I think on raw no synergy power level, I think it's fine, but probably doesn't make the cut.
No, I think that's fair. I think that there are some cubes which have specific synergies that I do think will really like this, but it is specifically you, 1, are caring about the artifacts, and are 2, also sort of caring about the +1/+1 counters. Like if you're doing if you have artifacts in white X, and they're aggressive artifacts in white X, and you have green white to be a +1/+1 counter Eve, like Conclave Mentor, that kind of synergy where kind of you pay this and they become incubate effectively 4/4s or 5/5s because of stuff getting more counters on them. That's where I think this could see a play. It is a niche wedge, I would admit that, but yeah, I think there will be some cubes that want this, and I'm also assuming this will be quite cheap as well. So
yeah, I can see that. It ticks a lot of synergy boxes, right? That white is often in. It makes multiple artifacts. It puts lots of multiple +1/+1 counters into play. I could certainly see it coming up. Yeah.
awesome. Right, we have our first blue card now. We have Chrome Host Seed Shark. It is 2 in a blue for a 2/4 creature Phyrexian Shark. It has flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. So again, similar to the last card, the fact that this makes artifacts, I do think is huge. Secretly, the best part of Third Path Iconoclast to me is that it does a similar thing, that it just puts artifacts onto the board. This just overlaps with those decks so nicely. If you're doing construct token things, I think this is really good because it makes a lot of artifacts. One thing that I haven't actually mentioned about the incubate tokens actually is that we've had a lot of sets recently where you have things like power stones, you have treasure, you have things that kind of you have ways of getting additional value with these artifacts. These are the first ones that can actually kill your opponent. They flip into creatures. This could add up quite quickly. And then I think they're fine just in your standard is it tempo type deck. It is a 2 in a blue for a 2/4 flyer that just gives you more value, gives you some creatures to kill them with. I think that is quite good. I would consider playing this if it made any of the artifact tokens that I previously mentioned. But the fact that it makes incubate tokens, I think, is very strong.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think this is a really cool card, actually. I think this is a really exciting addition. I think the other thing that's worth noting is there are a few cards which already see play in a lot of cube, which really go off with this. specifically like, imagine you play this on turn 3 and you have a Force of Will in your hand.
Ooh.
How do you lose that game?
Ooh,
You're
James.
going to
Yeah.
force their turn 3 play, untap, pay 2, you're attacking with a 5/5 and a 2/2 flyer. Or, if probably slightly later in the game, play this, cast your Treasure Cruise.
Yeah.
You get an 8/8. Like, sure, you have to put 2 more mana into it, but yeah, I'll put 2 more mana to get my 8/8. That's absolutely phenomenal. You don't even, and also worth noting, they don't actually get, because you'll play this, then you will have priority. If you want to cast that spell immediately and get your immediate value, their removal won't stop you getting the first token.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this card's pretty exciting, to be honest. And yeah, those are just the like top end scenario. But yeah, as you say, also like pumping out multiple small artifacts, even if you're not immediately flipping them, like you just need pieces of cardboard in play that say artifacts on them. Like that's also can be really strong. I think this is a really cool card because it's like it's powerful, but it will be powerful contextually in different spots and like be pushing in different synergy directions, and you've got to like find a place for it in your deck. And I think this is a really good inclusion.
No, definitely. Like I've been. I've definitely played a lot of these style of effects in Cube. Like I don't think I've ever ran Talrand, but I've definitely run like Poppet Stitcher and the 4-mana 1/4 that makes 1/1 flyers. I th- I think I'm higher on this than all of them.
I'd agree with that.
Like I actually found Poppet Stitcher a little bit underwhelming. Yeah. I just like it does the base thing that they do, but just it synergizes with so many things. And yeah, and yeah, I didn't even think about like the upside of like Force of Will or like Snuff Out is in a lot of Cube. That's full.
Yeah, the swing when you play this into Snuff Out is ridiculous. Yeah, no, this does a very, very passable Shark Typhoon impression for 3 mana. That's pretty phenomenal.
Cool. Do you want to take away with our next one? We have an invitational card, or I think, or a...
Cool. Yeah. So next up we have the invitational card of the mighty Yuta Takahashi, world champion number 27, I guess. Wait, is that right?
I'm
Yeah,
gonna go with yes.
27.
Yeah. It's been a while.
I can read. In my defense, for people not watching the video, it was Roman numerals. It wasn't just me failing to read the numbers 2 and 7. But anyway, we'll move on to that. Anyway, yeah, Yuta Takahashi's card. Great player, well known for crushing with fairies, even in formats where it is not strictly or even loosely playable. So yeah, love this card. Also, shout out to Wizards for, I feel like they've landed in a great spot with like all of these invitational cards. Like Paolo's one was great. Javier's one was great. They always seem to end up in that nice spot of like good, playable, interesting, never busted. So yeah, good on them for that. This one I think looks really cool too. So it's called Fairy Mastermind. It is 1 blue for a 2/1 creature fairy rogue with flash and flying. Also has whenever an opponent draws their second card of the turn, you draw a card. And it has an ability 3 and a blue, each player draws a card. So obviously that's going to work with the first ability. Presuming you do this and your opponent has already drawn a card, i.e. activate it on their turn, not on your turn, that when you activate this ability, you will draw 2 cards and they will draw 1 card because you'll draw the regular ability and it will trigger. I really like this card. 2 mana, 2/1 flash flyer really doesn't need a lot more text. Think about how strong flash flyers like Vendilion Click and things are. Like a lot of the time, you're just like using that body in that scenario because it gives you so much flexibility. You get to leave up your counter spells, you get to leave up your removal. If they don't play into them, you go end of turn. Here's some pressure. You can't block it. I'm going to attack your planeswalkers. I'm going to attack you. I'm going to attack for battles I've given you. That's really valuable. And then this is a fantastic little value engine. You'll get an incredible amount of value just off that the passive without ever activating this. If your opponent has a Ponder in their hand, they're absolutely miserable. Anyone who's played with or against a Hull Breacher knows what I'm talking about. If their cantrips are sorceries, they can't play them on your turn, so they either don't play them or they trigger this ability and give you a free card for nothing. And then with that second ability, if you ever run out of stuff to do with your mana, or you've just left up other interaction, you're in their end step, you haven't used your mana, you get to draw 2 and they draw 1, and that's generally great for you. So yeah, I really like this card. I think this is a really nice little 2-drop for blue. Obviously, better if you have a vaguely aggressive or tempo-y blue deck, but honestly, I would play this in most blue decks. I think it's very good.
No, definitely. No, I think you kind of nailed it. I don't. The only thing I have to add is more kind of like. I think I heard an anecdote about this card that when they were designing it, I think he wanted it to be a 1/3 so he could flash it in to block Ragavan.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. The natural enemy of
Yeah.
Yusa Takahashi, I imagine, is a Ragavan.
But yeah, no, yeah, definitely very, very strong card.
Cool. Well, speaking of 1/3s, take us away with the next one.
Yep. So next up we have Rona, Herald of Invasion. It is a 1 blue for a 1/3 legendary creature human wizard. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona, Herald of Invasion. It also has tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So base level, it's a looter. We like that. It also has 5 and a Phyrexian black mana, which means you can either be paid with 2 life or a black mana to transform Rona, which you activate only as a sorcery. When you do, it transforms into Rona Tolarian Obliterator, which is a 5/5 legendary creature Phyrexian wizard with trample. Whenever a source deals damage to Rona Tolarian Obliterator, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it is a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So, if you just want a looter in Cube, this could potentially be the best option. The only other one that I think sees a lot of play nowadays is Jace Prodigy. Jace Prodigy, I think, is better in more kind of like a Spellsy style deck, but just in your average looter deck, I'm thinking not average looter deck. I'm thinking more in kind of like using the looter to put in like Reanimator, where you're going to be beating down with big creatures. This is a clock. I do think the top ability is kind of flavor text, but just as a base level being a looter, and then at some point you can just pay 5 mana and 2 life to just turn this into a 5/5 trample that can just start ripping your opponent's hand and you get the things from it. I think is very, very good. Yeah. I think it's early game, this is a looter. Late game, it can just kill people. Like, that's very, very strong for an effect like this that kind of you're already like looters are very playable in queue, but obviously power creep has definitely happened to them. Like, yeah, we've had Jason Prodigy for a while. This is probably comparable to that. There's always the Planeswalker thing of Planeswalkers are very strong, and in the right deck that could be stronger. But in your more kind of like in a more kind of like legacy style of cube where there's more things about like creature damage is more important rather than kind of like casting Time Walk. I think this could be stronger. What do you think, James? What's your?
Yeah, I like this card a lot. I'm pretty high on looters in general. Like I'd happily run Merfolk Looter in a lot of my Reanimator decks. I find most of I think that is its best spot, by the way, is Reanimator. I think in most of those decks you end up not so all in that you want to just do everything straight away. You want to be discarding cards for value and digging for those reanimation spells. And then it also gives you a discard outlet, which obviously you need to put your fatty in the graveyard. Like, yeah, I'd run Merfolk Looter in quite a lot of those decks, and this is a lot better than Merfolk Looter because the firstly it has 3 toughness. That is like meaningfully hard to kill. In terms of like you can't stomp it, and it can like block some real creatures, right? Like if they play a Ragavan, you're really happy with this. And then you get to the late game and you have 5 mana lying around. Yeah, this is fantastic. That backside's a real threat. I mean, 5/5 trample, and it will feel like a 5/5 trample haste because they will pay their 5 mana and attack for it straight away. That's pretty powerful. I guess the only negative you'd put on it is there's some amount of like anti-synergy between a looter and an expensive activated ability, because often what you'll be doing later into the game, assuming you've discarded your fatties or whatever already, or you've not found them, is you'll be discarding excess lands that you don't need. So there's a little bit of tension there, I guess, between like, do I want to discard my extra land, or do I want to keep it to get to 5 mana to flip this? But yeah, no. In general, I think the card's pretty great, honestly.
No, exactly. Like it's almost like the flip side is almost like your backup in a reanimated deck. Like, say you do the thing that you reanimate your thing, awesome, but then it just gets pathed or something like that. Like it's gone. This gives you that backup reach to kind of keep pushing the damage through in case you don't draw your next reanimation spell, or in case your big reanimation target is exiled. Like it can be your threat.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, well, you killed my previous 2 fatties. This is maybe not quite as scary
Yeah,
as Archon Cruelty, but you know what? It can still kill you, and it sure will.
it will. Yeah, exactly. It can still win a game. Yeah.
Cool. Next up, we have our first black card, which is Exsanguinator Cavalry, which is 2 and a black for a creature vampire knight. It is a 2/3 with menace and lifelink. Good keywords. And it has the ability, whenever a knight you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature and create a blood token. So this is, of course, itself a knight, so you can attack with this and put counters on itself. So you could play it sort of on its own as a growing threat with good keywords, which is fine, but honestly not good enough for most cubes. So okay, we want to play more knights in it with it. Now, as a creature lord, I think this looks pretty powerful. The problem is the tribe it is supporting is knights, and there really aren't that many good ones, especially not in black. Yes, knights is supported in this set, but all the other good knight playoffs are blue and white. So I really don't know how you have like Knight Tribal in your deck in black. I know there are some old cards that support that. There's a knight that lets you like play your knights from the graveyard, which is pretty cool.
Oh, what do you mean? Hakon Stromgold Scourge.
Yes, that is what I
That one
mean.
is sick. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I could see the knights thing. Yeah, maybe in a more budget cube, it's not going in the most powerful cubes, but yeah, there are payoffs. Like Hakon lets you replay your knights. Ariel, Knight of Windgrace makes a bunch of lights. You have like, I guess, playable Knight 2-drops in like Knight of Grace, Knight of Malice, and then Acclaimed Contender finds you some knights. Yeah, I could see that in some cubes. Say probably not like the most powerful of tribal decks you could go for. I don't know if there's like that density of playoffs, but yeah, obviously cards like this do help, and if you are in that Knight's deck, if you have that Knight's deck, 100% you should have this card in your cube. It is good there. Like the counter's great, and make a blood tokens is worth a lot. Like
Yeah. No, I do. Yeah.
there's
Mm.
if you're flooding out late game, blood tokens great. Yeah, so I've my concerns are more about how supported Knights is from the power level of the card.
No, cool. All good. All right, let's move on with Pylon. It is 3 and a black for a instant with Convoke, which means your creatures can help to cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 generic mana or 1 mana of that creature's color. So you could cast this for 0 by tapping 4 black creatures, for example. When you do, it reads destroy target creature or planeswalker and surveil 2. So 4 mana for destroying target creature or planeswalker with some kind of upside is pretty standard nowadays. We've seen a lot of these effects. It's basically if you specifically want, if you're kind of doing like putting stuff into the graveyard, like a spider spawning or delirium type of thing, this might be the flavor of that you want. The convoked aspect is nice as well because it means it can kind of like go in a token deck a bit more. Or like if like it can kind of, it has a spot in an aristocrat deck, you can be kind of tapped out and still cast this. That could be quite cool. I think it's fine. I'm hoping this is really cheap so that if you want to play it, you have access to it. Outside of that, like there are super efficient versions, but destroying a creature or a planeswalker is always nice. I think I think in most cubes there is an argument for maybe one of these, and you pick the one you want.
yeah, I could totally see that. I think you do need a decent chunk of creatures. I don't. I think you're pretty sad about it if you're like playing this in your blue black control deck. Um, like yeah, Surveil 2 is good. It actually gets better on more expensive spells, weirdly, because by the time you have 4 mana, you probably don't need more lands, or you're not actively looking for more lands. So if you can Surveil lands away, that's really good. Um, but it's just you compare this to like Heartless Act. Like, sure, you'll get a little more value when you do cast this, but you're giving up the ability to like kill your Ragavan on turn 1, kill your Mana Elf, kill your 2-drop if it's killing me. Um, it just doesn't keep you alive as well. And yeah, hitting Planeswalker's good, but I mean, I don't know about you. Actually quite rarely end up playing like Heroes Downfall in cube decks now. Like, it just feels a bit slow and like not that it's not playable, but like often your best black decks you end up cutting it, right?
No, that's fair. I know I just said there's room for these, but I am looking at mine. The only one of these I'm currently running is Murderous Rider because it is also a
Yeah,
creature
I think that one's significantly better.
and importantly is a mana cheaper.
Yes, certainly. But I think the spot I can see this is if, like, yeah, say you have a aristocrats theme, say, or something where you're putting a lot of creatures into play in your black deck, like you're playing Bitter Blossoms, whatever. Then this actually becomes quite powerful because yeah, you can even threaten removal when you have no mana available. And crucially, your opponent will never play around removal when you have no mana available unless they've seen this card already. So it's yeah, that's powerful for sure. So probably has a spot in some in some cubes. I think if you have like a black deck that puts a lot of creatures into play, then like cutting a hero's downfall for this is probably a pretty good change. Cool. Next up we have Traumatic Revelation. It is 1 black for sorcery. The target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature or battle card from it. If you do, that player discards that card. If you don't, incubate 3. So I think it's kind of like a despise, but if you miss, you still get something. Um, I'm pretty low on this card, to be honest. I think Despise's type effects for like discard that hits creatures specifically has always worked out kind of weak because like black's really good at killing creatures. The reason why stuff like Duress is pretty good is that it can like disrupt the stuff that would be hard for you to disrupt otherwise. And yeah, like sure this gives you a buyout when you miss, but like it's pretty bad. If you paid 2 mana to do this, and then 2 mana to flip into your 3/3, you played 4 mana for a 3/3. This is not a thing you can do and like too much and win games of cubes. It's yeah, I don't see it personally. What do you think?
No, I think that's completely fair. I think so. Yeah, you are completely right. It is effectively 1 mana for a despise to kind of have the backup of you get a artifact token. Yeah, in most power level of cubes, I don't think it could see play, but there is probably an element of in pauper because they don't have things like Thoughtseize or Duress is a
Duress is a
common, isn't it?
common.
Is Inquisition problematic?
Inquisition is, I believe, an uncommon. Despise itself is, I'm pretty sure, a common though. If you wanted that
Right. Okay.
effect.
No, that's fair. I think it's yeah. If it's going to get into a
Yeah.
cube, it'll be a lower power leveled, more budget environment. I think the not whiffing part is interesting, but yeah, whether you just want
Yeah.
the more efficient version, and if you get it, great. If you don't,
And the thing is, if
fine.
you're paying,
You
yeah,
you've seen
and
their
if you want to
hand.
play 2 for your discard spell, like you could play Agonizing Remorse, which can hit all spells and exiles it, which is often a pretty big deal. Um, yeah, I don't think the whole buyout if you miss thing is really enough. Like, if you cast this and see a non-creature, I'd much rather have my Agonizing Remorse and be able to take that non-creature than have this incubator token. I think in most spots.
No, fair, all good. Right, let's move on to our first red card now with Blood Feather Phoenix. It is 1 and a red for a 2/2 creature Phoenix with flying, and Bloodfeather Phoenix can't block. It also has, whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control deals damage to an opponent or battle, you may pay a red. If you do, return Bloodfeather Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until end of turn. So I do like this card. It seems very solid. It's a very solid red aggressive card. That can go into other decks because it can be recursive. Just let's do the body first. Just like 2 mana, 2/2 flyer in red will just get 3/4 damage. Like red is very happy with that. How recursive this is, I'm not 100%, just because you do need instants or sorceries that deal damage to an opponent. So I think it gets better if you're running things like Fork Bolt or Arc Lightning, where you can kind of take out, where you can move the damage around. So you can kind of like take out a creature and ping your opponent for 1, then bring this back on top of that. Like Fork Bolting their X1, doing them for 1, and then playing a red to bring this back. That seems pretty strong. I did have a count through my cube earlier. How many? So in my 540 cube, how many ways do you think, James, I have way of bringing this back?
I guess maybe 5.
Oh, okay, there's actually 12.
Oh wow. Oh yes, yeah. Okay, I could see that.
It's 12 instants or sorceries that can deal damage to an opponent. Obviously, things like Lightning Bolt, quite a bit of the time you want to use on a creature. You don't necessarily want to use it on an opponent, but it could be used to then bring this back. Do you think so? Do you think 12 is enough? Like I'm going with that's a kind of ballparky average. Say with a 540, it's somewhere between like 10 and 15. Say with a 360, it's somewhere between like 8 and 12. That kind of thing. Do you think that's enough?
I do think that's enough actually, because I think 2 mana 2/2 flyer in red specifically, for those mono red decks is great. I think they're pretty happy with that creature already. And then if you have like 3 ways in your deck, I think this gets really strong because sure, often you might want to bolt their creature normally, but if bolting them comes with a 2/2 flying haste, then yeah, in a lot of spots I'll bolt them instead and be pretty happy about it. You know, deal 3 to you, put a 2/2 flying haste into play, so basically deal 5 to you this turn. Is that's a really big swing. This isn't, comes back and get rid of it at end step. This sticks around, so it's gonna be a threat. A 2/2 flyer is a meaningful threat in a lot of board states. I'm pretty into this card. I think this is like, I think often like 2 drops in mono red. Sometimes there's not like a bunch of amazing ones. There's some like kind of only okay ones that get in there. You see things like Kari Zev making the cut sometimes. It's like fine card, but
You have like the top tier, probably like if you're thinking something like Eidolon in terms of if we're just thinking mono red, but then it does kind of fall off. Like a lot of them are kind of just 2 mana 2/2s or things like that. Like they're kind of some ones with cool effects. You have things like Shaker Kenra, Felden, Ronim Excavator, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think in terms of just the amount of damage that will actually deal to your opponent, it does kind of drop off after Eidolon.
yeah, honestly, I would play this over like most of the 2 drops that are already in. Like, honestly, even Eidolon, I feel like is slightly, I don't know if this is heresy, slightly overrated in Cube specifically, because it's not like Modern where everyone's playing like 90% cheap stuff. Yeah, I think this card's pretty strong. Like, obviously, if you knock against it compared to a lot of those other cards, it doesn't have haste, so it doesn't like deal that immediate damage. But I think the evasion makes up for that. I think this is it's a really threatening card that they'll have to kill, and when they do kill it, all your burn spells are suddenly pretty scary.
No, spectacular. Cool. Do you want to take it away with our next one?
Cool. Yeah. So next up we have Death Greeter's Champion. It is 2 and a red for a creature human warrior. It is a 2/1. It has dash for 3 and a red, which is a mechanic we have seen before, but not for a bit maybe. So dash is you can pay the dash cost to put the creature into play, and it gains haste until end of turn. And then at your end step, if that creature is still in play, you return it to your hand. It also has backup 1. So I think this is the first instance of backup we've seen. So backup is when this creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it can be on itself or it can be on another creature. If that goes on another creature, that creature gains the following ability until end of turn. And in this case, that following ability is Double Strike. So this always has Double Strike, but if you put that +1/+1 counter on another creature, it will give that other creature Double Strike until end of turn. So when I first read this, I thought it was like kind of bad just because like the body's pretty underwhelming and for 3 mana, but looking at it again, there is a bit of an engine here with the dash, right? It's kind of slow, but every turn you dash this, you put a counter on something else, and it gains double strike until end of turn, and then you get this back at your end step, and you can do it again next turn. So it's kind of good if you're flooding out a bit, I guess, as a way to like push a lot of extra damage, because it's going to be really hard for them to block that creature you put the counter on. And if this creature doesn't have a good attack, sure it has haste, but you can just not attack with it if you want to just keep that little engine going. Having said that, it's like that's quite a mana intensive sequence of plays, right, to be doing every turn. So I can see the potential. Giving double strike maybe to like a really big creature with trample or whatever does seem kind of good, but then it's like, if you just had like another 4 mana creature that could attack straight away, like a Hellrider or whatever, I think that, but most spots that's going to be better, right? But I think the card does have some potential. What do you think?
Yes, I think the comparison to things like Hellrider or maybe even Torbrand, like in a like mono red specifically aggro deck, this doesn't compete in terms of just like efficiency of the other cards available to you. But for me, this is kind of like a red X deck. I think this card could be very spicy. Like in like a chunky Boros deck where you have like something with a bit of equipment on it, maybe, or you've done some other ways of buffing it up, or like a Gruul Stompy deck again with the trample creatures, that kind of thing.
Give your questing beast +1/+1 and double strike.
That's really scary.
It's a lot of
Like it
damage.
does just kill people, and the fact that at like top decking this with nothing else on the board, the worst case scenario is a 3/2 with double strike. That's for 3 mana. That is not bad. Like even if you just curve this out and played it yourself, yes, it wouldn't have haste the turn it comes in, but then
Yeah,
double strike is very good. Like it will kill people.
it does kill people. It's and it's hard to block. I mean, I think 3 mana 3/2 double strike is, whilst a powerful card in like a
Mhm.
draft environment, is just not quite good enough for cube because it lacks that instant impact, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think you combine that with the utility of the dash, especially like later in the game. Yeah, I can see it all adding up to a playable card for sure.
Mhm. Well, we'll see how we think of the next one. Because next up we have Hedron Detonator. It is 2 in a red for a 2/3 creature Goblin Artificer. It has whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Hedron Detonator deals 1 damage to target opponent. It has sacrifice 2 artifacts, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until end of turn. So I think this is a cool card. I think it certainly does a lot of things that artifact synergy based decks like. If you're going wide with artifacts, like if you're making treasure tokens, or if you're just playing it with the shark that we saw earlier that incubates a bunch, um, that damage will add up over the course of a game. Or if you're going down like the artifact aggro style of thing, again, like turning your Porcelain Legionnaire, getting the damage in straight away, and then you have the creature to kind of go through for some more. I think is good. I think is good. Um, the bottom sacrifice ability, I do think is something that those decks also like. Like the artifacts decks do like having the ability to sacrifice artifacts, getting some value from your wellsprings, that kind of stuff. Um, I think this is a solid role player, but just comparing this to most other red 3 drops, which is it tied with white 4 drop planeswalkers as just the one of the hardest chunk of things to get into. Um, I think in most standard cubes this will struggle, but if you are doing some cool artifact synergies, I think this could have a place in those style of cubes. But yeah, I think uh, outside of that, it is a harder sell.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as you say, it doesn't really stand on its own. It's a synergy card for sure. I think that the spot that kind of stood out for me with this was, yeah, some sort of like red black, make lots of artifacts, they all trigger things, sacrifice them, they trigger more. You have Mayhem Devils, Disciple of the Vaults. It all adds up to a lot of damage to face. Can be a part of that for sure. Yeah, so your triggers deal damage on the way in. And this gives you like ways to sacrifice them for some amount of value. It you know, Sacking 2 artifacts for 1 card is,
For one card, that's very stingy in 2023. That should be 2 for 2 at a minimum, if not like
yeah, and it's not even a card in hand. It's you have to play it this turn. But so I don't think it's good. That's not good on its own. But like, if you're triggering other stuff when you're sacrificing your artifacts, and those artifacts are like low value, like treasures, blood, food, whatever it might be. Yeah, I could see it being a role player in a cool synergy deck. You're playing your only cult Ambles and your experimental synthesizers. I've This is a deck I've like yet to see really come together and do its thing. But if they keep printing more pieces for it like this, then it gets better, and it may well be the pieces are already there, and I've just not seen it yet.
I am well aware that I am a absolute sucker for a synergy card that is underpowered. I am well aware of this, and it's something I do need to probably look at in my own cube. But that's a topic for another
Well, I mean,
video.
We don't want cubes to all end up the same, right? And I think the time when this deck comes together, it could be really cool, and it could possibly be quite powerful as well.
Mhm.
But you just do need a lot of pieces.
Completely fair. Do you want to take it away with our second battle of the day?
Yeah, I certainly will. So next up we have Invasion of Mercadia. Someone who knows more about magic lore will have to tell me where and what Mercadia is, but we're invading it.
I will jump in just to cut off any comments. I think you do know where Mercadia is from. Let me name some things for you: Richardon Port, food chain, bribery, snuff out.
I know what all of these cards are. These are all cards that were printed before I played Magic.
Fair enough. They're all from Mercadian masks.
Oh, of course.
Set on
That is
Dominaria.
that is a set. That is a set.
Yeah.
Thank you for saving me from the
No
comments
worries.
section.
If it helps, it was just another set on Dominaria, so
Okay,
it's not.
cool.
Yeah.
Great. I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless I'm now getting that wrong, in which case, yeah, let me know in the comments.
And the invasion of Mercadia is 1 and a red for a battle with 4 defense counters on it. So that means you'll have to deal 4 damage to it to flip it. When Invasion of Mercadia enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So you get a Tormenting Voice when it ETBs. We like that for 2 mana. And it flips into Chiron Flamewright, which is a creature goblin spell shaper. It is a 3/3 and has the ability 2 and a red, tap and discard a card. Create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. Creatures you control gain +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. I think this card's pretty cool, actually. I think Tormenting Voice is like not that far off being good already. Like you kind of need a reason to play it, right? But a lot of red cards are interesting in putting cards in the graveyard. Maybe you're doing some like Goblin Welder stuff, Trash for Treasure, or you can very reasonably play red in your Reanimator deck, and this works in all of those spots. And then, or even Madness is the other good spot. And then this is like pretty meaningfully better than Tormenting Voice, because if you can attack it and deal 4 damage to it, which is not an unreasonable ask if you are putting creatures into play in your Madness deck or whatever, then you get a very real creature. You get a 3/3, and this activated ability is not bad at all. This is like will close games. It gives your other creatures haste as well. So maybe you play like a 2 or 3 mana creature on 6 mana and you activate this straight away. You're hitting with that creature's got bigger, it's attacking straight away, and you have 2 2/1s attacking them. I could see it. You need, you're not just putting this in as generic good red card, I think. I don't like it in mono red, for example, but I think, if you're doing something with the Tormenting Voice ability, then the back ability obviously feeds into that as well, because it's discarding cards. I think it could find some spots.
It's basically, this goes in decks that already specifically want the Thriller possibility, Tormenting Voice, because one thing to kind of, that's, I guess, worth mentioning as well is battles are another type in your graveyard. So they will turn on like Delirium quicker, they will make your Goyf bigger. With the Delirium thing, like it's not worth running if you're just running Dragon Rage Channeler. Like you need you need like Delirium to be a sub theme, I think, for this to be.
Unholy Heat's good.
Unholy Heat's very good.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good for just Delirium, but I think these themes kind of bleed into each other, right?
No, definitely.
It stocks your graveyard, which makes your Channeler better, and also does a bunch of other stuff, right?
No, exactly. I guess the one thing with it is obviously this doesn't go to the graveyard when you cast it. It goes onto the battlefield, which, when I was thinking about this earlier, that is a little bit awkward. Like I kind of want a sorcery speed Tormenting Voice that is like a different creature.
You want tribal Tormenting Voice.
Yes, that's kind of what, because in theory, for this to get that discount in the graveyard, you either need to discard it in a different way, so to like a different effect, maybe you Faithless Looting it away or something like that, or for it to be defeated, then have the creature dies.
That's a lot of steps, isn't it?
It is a lot of steps. Like it is. Everything I said about like the Delirium and the Goyf thing is true, and maybe this is a thing of Invasion of Mercadia is better when you have multiple, so that maybe it's 4 different formats, which is fair. That happens because if you can pitch 1/2/1, if you play Invasion of Mercadia and then discard another one, then that will turn your things on a bit easier. But just having more of these card types in cube will naturally help out those.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you surveil it away with your Channeler, it's a unique type, right? I think I see it less as being about the Delirium and more as being about, I have a deck that makes me kind of already want Tormenting Voice a bit, and this is better.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like Thriller possibility does exist, which is the instant version, but basically you're losing the instant speed, pushing it back to sorcery to have the potential upside of it being another subtype.
Yeah. And attacking it and flipping into this threat, which is pretty good.
Cool. All right, let's take it away with our next one. So next we have Kenra's Spell Spear. It is 1 red for a 2/2 creature Jackal Warrior. It has Trample and Prowess, which is importantly, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It has the activated ability, play 3 and a blue Phyrexian mana. So again, that is either 2 life or a blue mana, to transform it into Gitaxian Spellstalker, which is a 3/3 creature Phyrexian Jackal with Trample, Ward 2, and Prowess. So the reminder of that is each instance of Prowess triggers separately. So you play a spell and it gets +2/+2. That is quite strong. So I think this is a very solid creature for like a spells base, maybe like a tempo-y deck, that kind of thing. Like with the Phyrexian mana, you don't have to be in that color, but the most natural place for this will be like in a blue deck where you kind of have like ops and like some card advantage, that kind of thing. There is definitely a place for this in kind of like Feather the Redeemed style like commentary, because like this flipping this like with a spell that buffs this is a lot of damage, like in like a blitzy style of deck. Double Prowess and Trample on a 3/3 will add up very, very quickly. In higher power level cubes, I'm not sure, because you have like more permanent versions of this, like is it Spell Sprite Dragon or something like that? There's
Sprite
like
Dragon, yeah.
Sprite Dragon. That's it. Like that is a solid card in that kind of deck. This like maybe it could see play there, but the main place I see this personally is something like Peasant. This is an uncommon. I think this could be very strong there where you have those other effects because like most cantrips are uncommon. You have access to all the good ones. You have access to good burn spells. They're all uncommon. Like this just could be a very broken card in that kind of environment. What do you think, James?
I think I'm a bit higher on this card even than you
Oh, really?
actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. Obviously, this is kind of a business in like a blue-red prowess deck, but I think the upside of this over something like Sprite Dragons, I think this is also like pretty playable in mono red. Honestly, like obviously you don't want it in a like 16 creature mono red deck, but most mono red decks don't end up like that creature dense. And we spoke earlier about there not being like a huge amount of great mono red twos, and I think if you compare this to something like Abbot of Carol Keep, which sees a lot of play, I think I kind of prefer this actually. The second point of toughness really matters. It makes for like threat of activation thing pretty real, or threat of triggering it thing pretty real on the prowess, and then only 3 mana to flip. Like on turn, if you have four lands in play, you can go flip this, bolt something. You're attacking with a 5/5 trample ward 2. It's
That's scary.
it's
Yeah.
a pretty scary creature. And it doesn't ask a lot of you. Yeah, I'm kind of high on this card actually. Say the trample's really nice, especially with pump spells. Like, you Titan strength this thing, for example. It's absolutely huge. Your
Yeah.
opponent's dead. Um, yeah, I could see this in a few different decks. Honestly, I quite like it. Um, yeah, only one red pip, easy to cast. Compared to a Sprite Dragon or something. I'm pretty in.
No, sweet. No, I'm glad to hear. Yeah, yeah, it does look like a good card, and it just being an uncommon, it could also see playing a lot of cubes because of that. But yeah, good card.
Cool. Next up, we have Rampaging Raptor. It is 2 red for a creature dinosaur at rare. It's a 4/4 with trample and haste. Apparently, red gets questing beasts now, which is pretty
Yep.
cool. You can pay 2 and a red to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. Not limited to once each turn. So if you have enough mana, you can activate that multiple times. And in keeping the Questing Beast theme, it has whenever Rampaging Raptor deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target Planeswalker that player controls or target battle that player protects. So that would be a battle that you have played and given to your opponent to protect. This is a scary card for sure. Like 4/4 trample haste is just really big. Like it's kind of what red wants out of its 2 drops. Yeah, whether this in like mono red or Gruul monsters. In terms of red fours, like Hellrider is kind of the gold standard. I don't think it's better than that, but compare this to like Hazoret, which sees a lot of play. I think you could make a pretty defensible argument that this might be better. Hazoret, for those that don't know, is a 4 mana 5/4 indestructible haste, but you can only attack if you have one or fewer cards, and you can pay mana to discard a card and deal 2 to them. I think you can argue this is better because this always attacks on turn 4. Often Hazoret doesn't. And that killing Planeswalker ability, anyone who has played with Questing Beast knows is pretty powerful. If you play your Planeswalker, they play this, and you're not just losing your Planeswalker, you're taking 4 and losing your Planeswalker. That's really good. And then the pump thing, like this isn't how you want to spend your mana a lot of the time, but sometimes you just have mana to spend, and this is quite scary. There's a real threat of activation thing there. The trample also synergizes nicely, obviously, with the dealing damage to planeswalkers. Like you can't just jump block it. Yeah, I quite like this card. I think it can see a lot of play.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this card other than it's just really good.
Yeah.
Like, it's I like the fact there's less words on it than Questing Beast, but yeah, just 4/4 trample haste for 4 mana is just good. Like, I'm looking at my red 4 drops right now. So currently, I have Caves of Chaos Adventurer, Hellrider, and Torbrand. So the Hellrider and the Torbrand, I think I like the gold standard 4 drops for the mono red deck. But the fact that this is going to be good in the mono red deck, but also good in anything else that's playing red as well, means that maybe there's an argument that Torbrand, maybe I don't know,
Yeah,
like
I
just
think you could argue for this being better than Torbrand.
yeah,
It's certainly better as well in Torbrand really only goes in mono red, and this, can go in like any aggressive red deck, whether that be Gruul or Boros or something like that. It doesn't have that super restrictive casting cost, and like it just has this huge impact straight away. Even if you have like a completely empty board, it doesn't need any help, which something like Torbrand does. And I suppose you could argue Hellrider does too, but I think Hellrider is just so powerful that it's hard to cut.
no, exactly, and that's the thing of like Hellrider still just does work with mana dorks when you need it to.
Yeah. That's really one of the cards that has survived power creep very well, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
um,
made it perfect first time.
yeah, they sure did.
Nice. All right, let's take it away with our second Praetor of the day. We have Urabrask. It is 2 red for a legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor, which is a 4/4 with first strike. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Urabrask deals 1 damage to target opponent, and importantly, you add a red mana. Then it has the activated ability pay a red, exile Urabrask, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery, and only if you cast 3 or more instant and/or sorcery spells this turn. I do feel like I don't need to read the second half of this card because I don't think you'll ever need to do it. But let's be thorough. When you do that, you transform it into a saga, the Great Work. Its first chapter is the Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. The second chapter is you create 3 treasure tokens. And the third chapter is until end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell cast this way we put into a graveyard, exile it instead, exile the Great Work, then return it to the battlefield. So you get the front side of Robas looping round again. So we have another 4-drop here in red to talk about. This one is more interesting. Whether it's better, I think, is something we can kind of talk about. But this it's a weird card. 4 mana first strike in red for 4-drop is a fine baseline. As kind of like it comes in, it does that. Everything we were talking about is kind of the upside and the cool stuff to do with it. So this is kind of a similar card to like Burgi, God of Storytelling, in that it makes mana when you cast spells. This is only instant and sorceries and is 1 more mana to get down in the first place. But then the flip side of that is also a 4/4 first strike. Burgi is a very powerful card. Like it can do stuff with Storm. Whether this or it can do stuff with Storm or kind of spell slinger style strategies. Whether this gets into decks as kind of another version of that or a replacement, I am not 100. That's the interesting part for me. That's kind of where I'm not sure where this card lies, and I'm not sure how it's actually going to end up. That's why I kind of don't really, if I'm honest, care about the backside, because you don't. If you're putting this in, you're doing it for the whenever you cast an sorcery spell, deal a damage to your opponent, make a red. Because kind of the dream is you just keep playing like burn spells, or you play increasingly cheap red spells that kind of draw you cards. Keep dealing your damage to your opponent. You never really care about the flip side. I mean, yes, the third chapter of the backside is effectively Yorgmoth's Will, but by the time you've got there, you could have just killed them with the 4/4 first strike that does the thing. All that means to me, I think that kind of, I don't think this is a replacement for Burgi in like Vintage Cube. If you're trying to do like Fairer Storm, if that is a possible to be a sentence in like a Legacy Cube, then this could have a place. We're just trying to like, you don't have a storm payoff, you just have like cantrips and spells that you're just kind of continually pinging your opponent with, like making mana, that kind of thing. Then it could see a place. What's your take, James? I know I kind of rambled a bit there. But...
No, I mean it's it's a really interesting card. I feel like there's a couple of places where it looks like it goes and it kind of just falls short in both of them. I think in terms of like I'm playing this on the fair, like maybe I have like a high spell density, and I'm trying to get my opponent dead. Like sure, if you play this, untap, attack with it, play a bunch of spells, you can have a really explosive turn for sure. But also, like, this is true of like most 4 drops you would play in that sort of deck. In terms of in a storm deck, trying to play the Burgee role, obviously the upside is it's also a win condition, right? But honestly, that's like it's a pretty clunky one, and that's not really the pain point in those storm decks. I think that's doesn't make up for the fact that it costs an extra mana versus the front side of Burgee. And Burgee, as a really good portion of the time you want to play it as the Horn, um, because that's just huge card advantage. It gets you through your deck incredibly quickly. You can often see every card in your deck if you untap with a Horn, and even like Fast as Oracle kill them, or Brain Freeze them out, or whatever it might be. This doesn't do that. It doesn't have that split capability, and the extra mana means it's like significantly harder to play this and go off in the same turn. Often if you go like Burgee Ritual, you tend to have like as much red mana as you need for the rest of the turn. The pain point is often, like they say, you go Burgee Pyretic Ritual, for example. The pain point is often, well, I tapped all of my lands to play my Burgee and my Pyretic Ritual. Now I only have red mana. And adding that extra mana onto that obviously increases that problem significantly. I don't think the 1 damage for each spell really makes up for that. So yeah, and yeah, you can flip it. I don't believe this matters. And honestly, the flipped side is like, sure, it's powerful, but it doesn't really like contribute to winning the game that much in Storm. Like, I suppose there's a world, like, I suppose it would come up if you had it in your Storm deck that you'd like play it, not be able to go off, flip it, kill a bunch of their stuff. Now you have some more time. But the other thing in Storm is like, if you play a creature and pass, like, especially if it's game 1, they generally have all these removal spells that they've not been able to do anything with because you're playing a Storm deck. So they'll just be like,
Yeah.
oh, fantastic, I have something to do with my Doomblade, and kill it, and it kind of didn't matter that much. So yeah, I don't think it gets there quite, but I'm like very willing to be proven wrong. And because I think Burgee's like a really sweet card. I love drafting that card. So even if it's a slightly worse version, I could see playing it, but I have my doubts at the moment.
Yeah, like everyone, like it is something I could see them throwing like into the Mitgo Vintage Cube just because it's a new mythic.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe we'll
I
find
see
out.
it as something that will be in the Mitgo Vintage Cube for like 1 to 2 iterations and then be cut.
Yeah. No,
Cool.
awesome. Right, do you want to take it away with our last card of the day, James?
I will. Next up, we have Voldaren Thrillseeker. It is 2 and a red for a creature vampire warrior. It's a 1/1 with backup 2. So when it enters, you can put 2+1/+1 counters on a target creature, and if it's another creature, it gets the following ability until end of turn. The following ability in this case being, you can pay 1 to sacrifice this creature. It deals damage equal to its power to any target. This is not good stats, is the first part of the problem. You're getting 3/3 worth of stats for 3 mana. This is not like exciting in Cube, so you need this ability to be really good. And you're giving something the ability to, you can fling it at an opponent until end of turn. So I guess ideally you want to put this on like a high power creature to maximize that damage, but hopefully not a creature that has such value to you that you don't want to sacrifice it. So like obviously it will come up that you just like put it on a big thing. Maybe you hit them with a big thing, then you sacrifice it and kill them. Like, yeah, sure, that totally comes up. But I don't see this being like really reliable enough. And the fail case, if you put the counters on itself, you paid a 3/3 that you can then pay 1 and sack it to deal its power to a target. I think is pretty weak, honestly. Yeah, it's the fact you can only like get this ability on one other thing. It's not like really, it's not a repeatable stack outlet. I think that really hurts it in like an aristocrats context. I don't really see the home for this card, but I'm willing to be proven wrong.
No, that's fair. Like, so, firstly, I think this card is cool, but again, I'm willing to admit the homes for it are a bit niche. So, my initial thought was like, oh, is there any kind of combos with backup and like persist? But like, nothing immediately comes to mind on that. Okay, again, Magical Christmas Land, but go with me on this. You have a sneak attack, and you have a creature with 8 power in your hand.
But I haven't won the game. Why haven't I won the game?
But you're about to, James. You're about to. You have sneaked. So, like, I see this as a potential. So, firstly, I like fling effects. I know that they have their drawbacks. This being on the base level for this being a 3-mana 3/3 creature means it's probably the second best drawback. Like, there's the one that we had. There's a land from a previous set. From one of the Zendikars, cards, like it front side is fling a thing, back side is tap land. If you sneak attack in a creature with 8 power, and then this, you put 2 counters onto the creature with 8 power. It now has 10 power. You attack with that. They take 10. You then pay 1, fling this at them, and they're dead. The only place I could see this is in any deck where you are cheating something into play, and it gives you that win that you, I will admit, might already have in the bag, but it gives you it that turn earlier.
Yeah, I can see it doing cool stuff, and obviously if you shallow grave something, I guess that works as well. But the issue is, like, I feel like if I've built my deck well, I really don't need help. That's not the scenario where I need my cards.
Yes,
to be
but
good.
James, I don't build my decks well.
Because, like, what happens when you have your sneak attack and you have this card that you've put in to support sneak attack, but that's it. You can't just sneak this in and, like, that doesn't do anything.
It's
like, I need 2 cards to go with my sneak attack now.
Yes, no, I know. There's definitely a thing of don't play bad cards to make your good cards better. Yes, that is.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the epitome of that. I will entirely concede that point.
If you have sneak attack in your deck, you can put in Ashen Rider, you can put in Inferno Titan, you can put in Grave Titan, you can put in Emrakul. You can put in Woodfall Primus. You need no help. You need no help. You attack them with, you do the thing. You don't need this, like, random 3/3 in your deck that doesn't really help you the rest of the time. Because, oh, cool, look at me, I got to, like, deal some more damage when I executed my putting in Archon of Cruelty with my sneak attack. No, this doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay, noted.
Sorry
noted.
Disparage your dreams.
No. It's probably safe to say this isn't going to make it on your top 5 cards of the set.
It would be surprising, yes.
I think it also.
Find out next week, but it would be surprising.
No, fantastic. That is a great segue, I think. So we are going to leave it there. James, thank you again for doing this with me. Thank you for your insights and talking me down off of some bad cards.
Anytime. Always happy to help.
Cool. And thank you very much to everyone watching and listening. Do remember to subscribe so you get notified when part 2 comes out in a couple of days or so. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.